What if every single word you spoke instantly became reality? Not metaphorically. Not in some inspirational, work hard and dreams come true kind of way. Literally. The moment the words leave your mouth, the universe bends to obey. Sounds like the greatest gift imaginable, doesn't it? But what happens when the person holding that kind of power isn't a hero, isn't a genius, and isn't even particularly responsible? What happens when the fate of every living soul on this planet rests on the shoulders of a man who can barely finish writing a book? This is that story. And it begins not on Earth, but somewhere in the cold, endless silence of space. Back in 1972, humanity sent a message into the stars. A rocket called Atlas Centaur was launched from Earth, carrying inside it a small golden plaque, a simple drawing of a man and a woman, and a map pointing back to where they came from. It was humanity's way of saying, "We are here. We exist. Come find us." For decades, that message floated through the darkness, unread, unanswered, and forgotten by the very people who sent it. But someone did find it, and what they found didn't exactly impress them. Now, let's come back down to Earth, where we meet Neil Clark. In his dreams, Neil is everything he wishes he could be. A celebrated author. A charismatic figure accepting awards on a grand stage. A beautiful woman named Catherine hangs on his every word, asking him about his brilliance, his success, his vision. It's perfect. It's cinematic. Then his dog barks, and the dream shatters. Neil jolts awake, face down on a pile of unfinished manuscript pages, drool on his cheek, deadline nowhere in sight. He's been working on this novel for over a year. He's nowhere close to done. This is the real Neil Clark. His days follow the same exhausting routine. Wake up. Walk Dennis, his endlessly energetic dog. Go to school. Pretend to teach a classroom full of students who couldn't care less. Come home. Stare at blank pages. Repeat. The only light in his day is his friendship with Ray, his sharp-tongued, warm-hearted coworker who somehow makes the mundane feel survivable. And then there's Catherine, the woman from his dream, who actually lives downstairs and occasionally asks, with polite but pointed curiosity, whether he's finished the book yet. Every time she asks, something tightens in Neil's chest. Because the answer is always no. Far above all of this, in the cold chambers of an intergalactic council that Neil doesn't know exists, a verdict is being debated. The aliens who received humanity's golden plaque had done their research. They had observed, and what they saw disturbed them. Greed, destruction, selfishness on a cosmic scale. The council's conclusion was swift and brutal. Earth needed to be erased. But one voice rose in dissent. One council member argued that perhaps humanity deserved one final test, one chance to prove that somewhere beneath all that chaos, there was something worth saving. The council agreed, reluctantly. A single human would be chosen at random and given unlimited power. What they did with it would decide the fate of every person on the planet. That human was Neil Clark. He didn't know it when he fell off his bicycle one ordinary afternoon. He didn't feel a surge of electricity or hear a divine voice. There was just the crash, the embarrassment of picking himself up off the pavement, and the quiet, unnoticed moment when everything changed. The powers arrived without announcement, without instruction, and without warning. And the universe, in all its infinite wisdom, handed the keys to existence to a man who couldn't even finish Chapter 7. Neil discovered his ability the way most people discover something world-altering, completely by accident. After a frustrating day, he muttered in irritation that his student's classroom should just be destroyed. Moments later, an alien blast leveled the entire room. Neil stood outside staring at the rubble, pale and trembling, unable to process what his own words had done. Then he went home, saw the mess Dennis had made, and sarcastically told his dog to clean it up himself. The mess flew into the toilet and flushed. Neil didn't sleep that night. What followed was a frantic, almost comedic spiral of testing. He turned whiskey back into its bottle. He teleported himself across the city. He reversed time when things went catastrophically wrong, which they did almost immediately. Bringing back the people who died in the classroom collapse sounded like the right thing to do until zombies started crawling through the streets. Neil screamed the wish away in pure terror, rewound time again, and sat in his apartment breathing heavily, realizing with dawning horror that good intentions and unlimited power were a genuinely dangerous combination. Still, the temptation was impossible to resist. He made his students focused, curious, and kind. He transformed the principal from a bitter bully into a man who sang Neil's praises in the hallway. He helped Ray, who had been quietly pining for a woman named Dorothy, by simply willing her to fall in love with him. It all felt generous, like he was finally doing something meaningful with his sorry excuse for a life. But something was already going wrong beneath the surface, quietly, the way a crack forms in a dam before anyone notices the water. Dorothy didn't just fall in love with Ray. She became consumed by him. She built a shrine. She convinced others that Ray was divine, immortal, untouchable. Meanwhile, the principal's new warmth bordered on unsettling devotion, and the students had stopped being students altogether, turning their classroom into something resembling a place of worship. Neil had not fixed anything. He had simply replaced one version of broken with another, and he was moving too fast to notice the difference. Then came the night everything became personal. Catherine's dangerous ex-boyfriend Grant forced his way into her apartment, and a terrified Catherine ran straight to Neil's door. For one quiet, fragile evening, something real seemed to exist between them. But Neil, unable to trust that realness, had already used his powers to make her feel something for him. When she leaned closer over dinner, was it her, or was it him? He told himself it didn't matter. He was wrong, because Catherine was the one person in his world who deserved the truth above everyone else, and he had already stolen it from her without her knowing. Grant wasn't finished. He returned with a weapon, forced his way in, and took Neil and Dennis hostage. Holding a gun to the dog's head, he demanded Neil use his powers to rewrite reality in Grant's favor. One by one, Neil was forced to speak terrible things into existence. Entire populations woke up with distorted features. The world outside was changing, twisting, warping under commands that weren't Neil's own. And then Catherine arrived, walked into the room, and Grant gave his final demand. He told Neil to make her love him. Neil obeyed, and watched Catherine's eyes go glassy and distant. It was the worst thing he had ever done. Even under threat, even in fear, it broke something in him. He fixed it. He turned Grant into a small, bewildered dog, broke every wish that had been forced out of him, untangled Dorothy's obsession, sent the followers home, and stood in the wreckage of a night that had gone completely off the rails. But Catherine remembered enough. She looked at Neil and said something quiet and devastating. She told him that taking away someone's choice, even with the best intentions, was still a form of control. She said she could never love someone who decided things for her. Then she walked out. And this time, no power on earth could bring her back. Neil sat alone in his apartment and felt, perhaps for the very first time, the full weight of what he had been doing. He had been playing with lives like pieces on a board. Ray's love life, his students' futures, Catherine's feelings. He had convinced himself it was kindness, but kindness doesn't override consent. Kindness doesn't erase the person to make room for the outcome you prefer. He had treated real human beings like problems to be solved rather than people to be respected. And now, trying to make things right on a global scale, he made it worse. Food for everyone became a crisis of excess. Peace became chaos. His attempt to reverse climate damage froze half the planet. Every solution cracked open a new catastrophe. Standing on a bridge in the dark, Neil looked down at the water and made a decision. Not a brave one. A broken one. But Dennis, his ridiculous, loyal, beautiful dog, ran after him. And in the end it was Neil who jumped in to save the dog, not the other way around. Shivering on the riverbank, holding Dennis against his chest, Neil understood something he couldn't have grasped at the beginning of all this. Some things cannot be fixed by force. Some things have to be allowed to be fragile. Up in space, the council watched. They argued. They reviewed everything Neil had done. Every mistake, every correction, every moment he had chosen to undo harm rather than let it stand. It wasn't a perfect record. It wasn't even a good one. But it was human. And after long deliberation, they made their decision. Earth would be destroyed. The vote had passed. The ship powered up. But Neil had already made his own decision. He gave his powers to Dennis. All of them. Every last drop of infinite possibility transferred into the one living creature he trusted completely and unconditionally. And Dennis, with no agenda, no ambition, and no understanding of what he held, simply destroyed the source. The alien ship disintegrated in silence, and the universe moved on. The morning after, Neil woke up ordinary. No power. No shortcuts. Just a half-finished manuscript, a snoring dog, and a doorbell that rang while he was still rubbing sleep from his eyes. He found Catherine on the other side of the door and told her the truth. All of it, plainly and without magic. He told her what he had done. He told her what he had learned. He told her he was just a man now, nothing more. And he asked if that was enough. Catherine looked at him for a long moment. Then she said yes to dinner. Not because he made her.
Because she wanted to.
And somewhere across the city, a small corgi named Grant trotted through a park, completely unaware of how lucky he was to still be breathing. Neil Clark had every power in existence once. And the only thing that ever actually worked was honesty.